when I saw Don Sweeney's name on my text, it was pretty special. It got me really excited, right? And of course, I want to be an NHL coach, but this means more, right? And why? I think there's a few reasons. I think the identity, and Don was talking about the culture we built here 20 years ago. It's still here, right? The style and all that, the winning mindset we had. I think that's something just gets me really excited, and that's what I believe in.
Welcome to the Hockey Hub. Sophia and Adam with you after a big day in Bruins history, and for Bruins as they officially welcomed and not announced, but I guess presented the 30th head coach in NHL history, former player Marco Sturm. We were both there, Adam in the press conference asking questions, myself at TD Garden on set, and we actually got an exclusive interview with Marco Sturm, which you guys will hear, with Andy Brickley and Judd Sirott. Adam, first of all, how the hell are you? And what a big day yesterday. How is that whole, I want to call it a circus, only because there was so much media, but it wasn't. It was an organized event. How was being there on set and just taking it all in?
Well, first of all, it was the first time in the Verizon Tower in the front offices of the Boston Bruins. It's a lovely building. It was a lovely backdrop, and what was an exciting day, to your point. Marco Sturm introduced as the new head coach of the Boston Bruins, what was rumored and reported, now official, and so he got to reintroduce himself to the Boston media after playing in Boston for a number of years in the 2000s. He joked about the Joe Thornton trade, saying it wasn't my fault, and so that was pretty funny. But for the most part, you just saw a passionate guy who is sort of still in disbelief, I think, that he's the next head coach of the Boston Bruins. It's his first NHL head coaching job, first German-born head coach in the NHL as well. So he was still trying to process it, but it was a great day, and it was great to see his family was in attendance, and Patrice Bergeron sitting in the front row, good buddy of his as well. Yeah, you know what? This happens a lot around the league. Obviously, we know that the turnover for coaches is pretty common. I actually, something I maybe could look up, but I think before 10 years were so long, and they're shorter and shorter these days. There are a lot of options. But what's unique to Boston, and I would say a couple of other Original Six teams, is just what a big deal and how much news this makes. We had obviously a lot of sports outlets there covering it, obviously ourselves, but then the regular news outlets. How many media do you think were on hand? Because I didn't get to see, like, in the presser. Oh, there was, every local news station in Boston and Providence, they were there. Oh, cool. Obviously, the regional sports networks were there, and so that's just the TV side of things. But nowadays, obviously, you have a lot more platforms, a lot more media members, so there's a lot of podcasters there, print reporters as well. So you have the normal beat reporters who were there for both print, broadcast, and the podcasters, as I mentioned. So I would say, including the photographers who were there, you'd probably say close to 50 media members were in attendance. It was standing room only for some as well. So yeah, it's a big deal in Boston, and it's a big deal in some other big markets as well, in Canada obviously, but Boston is a pretty exciting media market, to say the least, when it comes to the Bruins.
Yeah, so that's something I had the chance to talk to Marco Sturm kind of off camera while he was getting mic'd up for our show and a little social segment we did, and was just talking to him about being here, and obviously he has experience here, but even since his playing days, like the amount of outlets, like podcasts, that wasn't really a thing back then. Twitter was around, but it was very fresh, very new. There are so many different mediums in which people can have their own show or become reporters, so then the passes grow. And I just asked him about that part of the job. I think any coach that considers, working here or for a Montreal Canadiens or for a Toronto has got to be ready for that, because it could be exhausting. And I also know it's such an honor to represent and to be like the voice of your team. So there's that. But that's something that you've got to get used to. And Marco yesterday was doing the media tour. He was so awesome, smiles all around, but he probably answered the same set of questions at least, I don't know, 15 different times. And yes, it's just 1 or 2 days. I think this is going to die off. In the summer, he's not going to be bothered as much. But in the regular season, we know how many people cover the Boston Bruins, and that's just a big factor of the job. And I think coaches have to be prepared for that. Like that, I do think that's an important part of the job these days, and maybe not as important as it was 20 years ago. But now being able to handle that, I think is a factor.
Yeah, there's a lot that comes with the territory being a head coach in professional sports. In this case, the National Hockey League. In this case, a big market like Boston, where you have a lot of interest, a lot of media members, a lot of different platforms. And so, yeah, not only is he going to be a head coach in the NHL and handling the business on the ice and communicating with the players and all that comes with that, but it's also handling the media on a daily basis. And so, yeah, that's going to be something that is new to him, but he seems ready for the challenge. He seems very passionate about it, and there's a lot of excitement.
Well, like I said, we had an exclusive interview with him, so we'll get to that in a sec, but I just kind of want to set up the show. You also had an exclusive interview with Don Sweeeny. You went one-on-one with him, so we're going to play that a little later on. Patrice Bergeron was on NESN talking about a couple different things, so we'll hear from Bergie. And, of course, if we have time, which I think we will, we're definitely going to talk about this Game 4 coming up between the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers after a really lopsided and, to me, unexpected result on Monday in Game 3. So, listen, we'll get to that later. Right now, let's toss it over back to the Garden, where we got to talk to Marco Sturm exclusively yesterday. And as promised, welcome back to the TD Garden. We have Marco Sturm, 30th head coach in Boston Bruins history, on set with us with, of course, Judd and Brick. Marco, thanks for being on our show. We've been watching you do the media tour. I'm going to embarrass myself here, but try to say Willkommen zurück in Boston.
Oh,
how'd I do?
Dankeschön.
Okay,
yeah,
very good.
So you did good. Yeah.
As I said, we've been kind of watching you do the tour, and that's going to be where my first question starts with you. It wasn't going to be here, but just in understanding the impact. This isn't normal for all NHL franchises to cover this day with so many people. Your day is going to be a very long one, and I know it's the day that you're being announced, so I know you're prepared for it. Yep. But and from playing here, this is going to bleed into the season. The media, the questions, the attention. How prepared and how much are you going to embrace that as the head coach?
No, and I know it's part of it, right? It's part of the gig, especially when we're near Boston. So I know it as a player, so that definitely helped, all right? And it will help. It's not going to be pretty all the time, just like today. I know that too. So, having that experience, I think it will prepare me a little bit better going into the season.
In terms of the job, now that the process is completed, you're now the new head coach of the Boston Bruins. There were a number of issues with this team from a year ago when you don't meet expectations and you lose. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, the first order of business, is it all about preparation for training camp? It
is. I mean, first of all, I think my staff has to get completed first. I think that's right now, and then after that, yes, absolutely. It's about us. It's about our system I want to put in place. It's about training camp game day one, because what I'm hearing and coming from a lot of players, they didn't have that good training camp coming out last year. Could be different reasons. I really don't care, but not I think not under my watch. So I think that's something it's going to be different. It's going to be good. It's going to be a new voice, right? I'm going to demand a lot, but I also I'm going to push it right from day one, because I know how important it is.
And you know how important the culture is, and you spoke about that at length in your press conference earlier today that we were able to carry and listen in. And I'm just trying to get a visual of what that locker room can look like, because it needs to be reestablished. It was the envy of the league for about 20 years. Yeah. It took a hit last year. Yeah. How do you go about restructuring that?
Yeah, no, and the good thing is I'm not by myself, and I mentioned it too. I still believe we have a really good core of players, and I talked to all of them. All right, I talked to all of them, but right away I can tell, they have the Bruins DNA. So it's not like I'm going to start from scratch. No. I think that leadership group, I think that I'm going to work closely together, right? Those guys have to drive that bus, and I need them, and we need them, and starts with preparation, starts with even practice, right? It starts training camp. Those are the things. I'm going to be the front runner, but I also need those guys, and when they do that, you know what? It's going to trickle because it's the young guys will follow, all right? And that's how I learned here as a young guy. That's how I learned from older guys. That's probably you learn from.
That's right.
Some from different guys too. That's just the way it is. But somebody has to do it. And I felt like, yes, there was a lot of injuries last year, but it kind of, got forgotten a little bit. The pride, the energy, what you have to bring in every day for the Bruins.
So one of the things that Brick talked about, just how much the culture was the envy here in Boston around the National Hockey League, and you were part of that almost from the get-go when Patrice Bergeron was first coming into the organization. Zdeno Chara was signed as a free agent. You were already here at that point. But one of the things that, whether it was Claude Julien or subsequent coaches, they never felt like that they had to exert themselves, that they felt like the room ran itself. I guess now, in the position that the Bruins are in, do you feel like you have to have a little bit more influence in the room with some of the changes that have taken place?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a new guy, and I have different thoughts and different ideas how I want to approach things, and these guys are so used to from I'm not saying the same. They have 4 different coaches. I know it's different, but on the other side, it was kind of like the same. Like the way they played. So it's going to be just a refreshing a little bit. It's going to be a little different, but at the end of the day, I definitely, I have to put my foot down here right away from the start because I don't want any gray area in my game. You can't think about that, right? So it's going to be, with me, it's going to be very clear the way I wanted to play, the way I want to, see us going moving forward. I think the one thing I learned, I stick with the process, there will be some up and downs, but you got to stick with it though, and that's going to be, I think, will be the challenging thing too, especially with media and everything like that. So it's going to be different, but you got to stick with it. And that's why, as I mentioned it today, it's not just me. I need more than that. I need my staff. I need my players. Because we all have to chip in.
One of the other topics I think that was pretty prominent in today's media session was offense and evolving the offense. And without getting into X's and O's on how you do it, and I know you talked about, start in your own zone. I mean, that's how you get a better offense. That's how you get out of your own end. I understand all that. But how difficult as a head coach in the NHL is it to teach offense?
Yeah, no, it's the funny part is, and I saw it with my kids. I'm telling it was my kids, like my Ontario Reign kids. I call the kids. I saw them with them. Like, okay, do you actually want to score? That was one of the questions I always had for them because you got to show me. All right, when you're in the offensive zone, you can have the best structure you want. All right, but show me. Show me that you want to score. Show me that you want that puck. You got to show me that you want to be front of the net and work for it. All right, I think that alone, that mentality, you got to have. And if you look at perfect example yesterday again, or even the finals, if you look at the Florida Panthers right now, right, they go to the net, right, and not just one guy, they got everyone, and they go to the net, they throw pucks to the net, different ways to do it, but they're hungry, and that just alone, I think that's something. I noticed from the younger generation, I think from the last 3 years, and that's something I'm gonna have a different mindset. I'm gonna try to teach it. I'm gonna show it, and I gotta pretty much tell them every day too. It's just part of the job.
Part of this summer obviously has to be, and you mentioned it, that you've already had some conversations with a lot of veteran guys, but how important will be for you to make those connections between now and the start of training camp so they're able to execute the things that you want?
No, communication for me, it's always a big thing, and you got to have a good relationship, and it starts right now, right? And that's why I was calling a lot of guys, and even a lot of guys actually reached out too. So it was a little bit of combo. So it was nice to see. Guys are really excited. I think everyone is ready for a little bit of change. And but again, it is important because end of the day, I want the best out of my players. And I think when you have an open relationship and be fair, but also honest, I think you will get that. And again, it goes back to that leadership group because those are the guys, and it starts with them.
One of the aspects of a team that's in a rebuild or a retool to get back to being a competitive playoff team and a team that's going to challenge for the Cup, you have to have young guys mature, develop, and become key players in your lineup on a regular basis each night and help you win a lot of hockey games.
Yeah.
That is going to be one of the challenges that you face with some of the young players that the Bruins have on the roster right now. How do you go about getting the most out of those guys? Because you have coming from a player development side.
Yeah, and again, you have to pick them up right away, I think, those guys. You got to build that relationship right away with them. And again, those... unfortunately, we don't have too many, right? I think Don Sweeeny is working on it right now. I think it's really exciting, actually, to have lots of picks coming up the next 3 years, but it's going to take time. So for me, I don't have that time, but I also, I'm going to focus on the guys we have in our recurring lineup. And again, those guys, they got to earn it too, first of all. But on the other side, we got to help them. I got to help them to get to the next level. And I think in the past, I proved this is one of the things I like to do, I enjoy to do, working with those young kids.
Patrice Bergeron talked about how helpful you were to him when his NHL career was still in its infancy, and I'm curious what your message was to Bergie then, and will it mirror some of the message that you're going to convey to some of these young players now?
Yeah, I mean, and believe it or not, I was actually a quiet guy, in the locker room. Even when I played, I was very quiet. I think coaching changed me a little bit. Now I gotta talk and talk and talk. But what I did, I think most importantly, I lead with example, right? And again, he was sitting right beside me the 5-6 years I was here. I think he saw me preparing every day, take care of my body, how I treat every practice like a game, with lots of energy, lots of pride, lots of emotions, and I think we just feed off each other. And I think he just by doing that, just by watching me, I think he would hopefully agree. He would see that.
One of the words that Don Sweeeny used a couple times when people asked him what was important to him in finding a coach, and also how you stood out of 14 candidates. That's a lot of candidates to be interviewing.
Yeah.
He used the word the path that he took was very important to me. Anyone could look up your resume. We know it. A very fantastic resume, starting with Team Germany, like you said, when you really fell in love with coaching. But I'm just curious, not from a technical standpoint what your resume looks like, but more emotional and mental, what that learning curve, what that path was that Don saw that you are ready for this job right now.
Yeah, no, I took a little bit a different route, right? I took it a little bit the harder way, but again, I had to know too where I'm at as a coach. What do what are my goals? And I think, yes, with the German national team, I came over, but even in LA as assistant coach, I think it took me a year or two. Okay, what exactly what I want to do, right? Do I want to be a head coach or more like assistant for 20 more years? But soon, really soon, I thought, okay, no, I head coach, that's me. I'm a way better head coach than assistant. I'm not going to lie, but this is me, and that's why. And then the job came up in Ontario, and that's why there was no question. I said, I'm gonna chase my goal. To be a head coach here in the national hockey team, and I'm talking to a few people, only a few, and they advised me that's the way you have to go. And for me, it was a no-brainer, and I didn't care if I have to drive the bus for 20 hours. I didn't really care. And again, I wanted to do that. I even left my family at home, so that even alone I think shows a lot that that I had something in mind and I wanted to chase, and it's nice to get rewarded.
I think we have a pretty good handle on Marco Sturm, the man. I'd like to get to the essence of your coaching philosophy, if I can. I don't know if you can express it in a short amount of time, but people would say, well, goaltending, team defense, strength down the middle. Do you still believe in those three pillars, or has the game changed? The essence of your coaching philosophy is different.
Yeah, no, I mean a lot the same, but a lot different, or new, or whatever you want to call it. But I think the defensive part of the game, I think that it's really strong in me. I think that's something we built here, and they still have it, and that's something I don't want to lose. I believe in playing good defense that creates lots of offense as well, right? Do we want to spend too much time in our own zone? No, we don't. But I think that's the part now where I jump in now, or this new generation of coaches, when you get the puck. All right, what are you going to do about it? Are you just gonna play slow, or are you gonna play with pace and having that mindset right away to be ahead of some other teams? All right, I think that's something I'm big on. Transition game, I would say, and then to work towards entries in ozone. All right, and again, ozone, we touched on it a little bit, being more hungry around the net and finding ways to score. But I think overall, if you look at the games right now, in today's game, it's I call it the long game, right? It's a transition game, it's a neutral zone game a little bit, and again, I think that's something we can definitely improve.
Marco, one of the things that you talked about was Daryl Sutter, Claude Julien, the impression that they made on you. But if I look across your 900-plus game NHL career, you played for some strong personalities, whether it was Daryl or Ron Wilson, Mike Sullivan, Alain Vigneault, Claude Julien, we mentioned in there as well. But what do you find yourself taking from those guys specifically, where you're like, wow, I'm going to employ this. Maybe you employed it as an assistant coach with the Kings, or in the American Hockey League as a head coach with the Reign?
Yeah, you always want to get the good things out of those coaches you think who are the best. And for me, Claude and I mentioned it before, Daryl Sutter were the best. So that's the old school mentality, being very honest, but also hard and fair. I think that's something definitely in me. And the other part, I've seen it with some different coaches too, but I think the other part is it's me. That's who I am. I think that makes me maybe not unique, but that makes me, I think, a good coach, right? And I had Nate Thompson. Remember him? Mm-hmm. Nate Thompson. He was one of my assistant coaches last year, and in Ontario. And he came in one day, and I have to share that story. He came in one day, and it's like, because we played the same system as the Kings, right? Or we tried to. Let's put it that way. But he knows, because sitting beside me every day in the coach's room, he knew my thoughts, right? How I want to play. And he came in, he's like, just be you, right? Just be you, because you're better than anyone else. And that's exactly what I did. And just after that moment, I think I really realized that I'm actually really good too. So I have my own thoughts, my own ideas. Yes, I learned a lot from other coaches, but that alone, that conversation with Nate Thompson came a long way.
You've had some already very clippable and quotable moments saying, just be you, and this is me. And one of them we wanted to focus on is when you said, this means more, referring into your position with the Boston Bruins. You said, you had your experience with the San Jose Sharks, and then the timing is everything. Can you expand on the this means more, outside of what it means to your family, what it means because this is a city that you obviously embraced you and that you spent time with, but that this means more? Is it just where you are in your life right now as well?
How much time do you have?
I think like 2 minutes. Okay. But okay. It's longer. It's longer.
Sure. To keep it short, it's a combination of everything. I'm a big family guy. It's about my family. They absolutely love this city. They grew up here. They had good memories. Now we all meet again here because my kids are in colleges around here. So you can't write a better script, right? The other part is just the memories I had when I played here, the success we had, building something, even with the fans in the back. Like it was incredible, right? And now even here, me as a coach. So I talked about the timing, where we at as a team right now, and it just also the age. I'm 36, 36. I wish 46 years old, but the path I went, the last 7 years, really took my time to really, get the job at the right time. It just, I don't know. It doesn't feel real yet, but I feel like it all came together at the right time, at the right spot. Mm-hmm. And that's why, as soon as I saw Don Sweeeny, I was like, oh my God, this is exciting. And that's why I was really hard on it. I pushed it probably through my presentations. I had the interviews a little bit harder because of it,
Yeah, it sounds like what I love, and I love it. There's so much intentionality behind your path and your journey. You didn't follow into it. Like you said, there's some sacrifices leaving your family. Very intentional. We have about a minute left, and so not a lot to give an answer. If you don't mind me just throwing in, you mentioned this leadership group and this core, Marco, but no named captain for now. Is that going to affect things for you with how more vocal you are in the room? Yeah, no, I mean,
end of the day, I even told Don that, end of the day, I do want a captain. Doesn't have to be right now, but I think we touched on it a little bit, not too much. I think moving forward, we're going to have more conversation about it. But the other thing you got to know is I don't actually, I seen the Pasternak and the McAvoy and Lindholm. I seen them play, but I don't really know him as a person. So I think having that chance just to meet him and be around him, and I think that then I can actually tell management what I think, but as of right now, I think it's a little bit too early. I don't know yet what they think, but those conversation definitely will come up this summer.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, your generous, honest, and candid answers. Marco Sturm, 30th head coach in Bruins history. We'll be right back after this. So we are going to, oh boy, this is going to be me monologuing. Wait, Adam, you can hear me? I was getting worried. I was going to have to monologue for like 10 minutes.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was you or if it was me, but at the end of the day, we got it fixed, so it doesn't really matter. What were you saying?
Okay, so I just said yesterday, obviously I got to witness that and hear all of his answers live, and so I wanted your reaction more about what you heard, and did anything stand out to you in particular?
Well, first off, it's great to hear you again. Secondly, I'll start with the last thing that you asked, and it was about the vacant captaincy. No captain for the Boston Bruins. Obviously, Brad Marchand traded. You have a vacancy there, and I thought it was an interesting answer, right? I mean, he knows what McAvoy can do on the ice. He used him as an example. But he doesn't know him as a person yet. So I think he's, and that's part of the thing that he had said in his introductory press conference, and he talked with you guys about it as well, is, he has spoken to everybody. He's getting to know the players at this point. And so it's the sort of getting to know you phase of, not just the leadership group, but the entire roster as it stands right now. Obviously, there'll be some new faces, we assume, going into training camp that he'll get to know later in the summer. But in terms of going into the season without a captain, that seems like it could be a possibility. It's not unprecedented, but I think, you heard him say that he would prefer to have a captain. So that's going to be an interesting storyline moving forward.
Yeah, I really liked his answer about just being like, I want to get to know these guys. Yeah. And I think I used this word in the interview, that how intentional he has seemed to be about his career path and his journey. And, he said a couple of times in the big presser, and I believe in this interview, I also got him in another one that we have that's going to be going up on our social. So I can't remember where he said it, but just about knowing that, like, coaching and being a head coach, not just an assistant coach, he said, this is me. And I think he said that in the presser. So he seems very sure about a path and a journey. And I think maybe he's going to want his players to feel that way as well in terms of who's going to be the next captain. I didn't love the narrative last year, and it was short because Brad Marchand got traded at the deadline. But I just didn't love the narrative of Charlie McAvoy or David Pasternak, just like, one of those guys is next in line, so it should be them. Although I don't disagree that they haven't particularly earned it. Like, they have, and I understand why we just picked those two guys. But I did feel like it just, because they're the longest tenured, because they've kind of grown up with the team, that it had to be one of them. I like the idea of somebody, of the new head coach who understands the culture, who understands where he wants to take this team, of taking his time. And I know it's not just his decision, but really being an earpiece for management about who he thinks has truly earned it and who's going to do the best job in leading the team. So if it takes a full season, it takes a full season, but I'd rather that than this kind of like panic button move of being like, we need one, and these two guys, one of these two guys have been here the longest, so let's pick them. I really like that he wants to observe and go from there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think ideally they would love to have a captain by the start of training camp or the end of training camp as they get into the regular season, but that might not be the case. And so if there is not a clear-cut pick going into the year, then yeah, you ride without one, and then you see how things play out after that. But, in terms of, the position of captain of the Boston Bruins, it's not something that they take lightly, right? And so I think that's something that everybody understands. And, we'll see what happens moving forward. But again, with David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy, those are two strong candidates to be the next captain of the Boston Bruins. I think, you and I have talked about it. I think Judd and Brick have talked about the evolution of David Pastrnak in particular. I know Charlie McAvoy had some injuries this year, obviously missed the rest of the regular season with what happened at Four Nations, but Pasta really evolved into sort of a leader in the room. And so that was interesting to watch. But, I know Brick and I have talked about this on Hockey Hub before, and again, maybe his thoughts have changed. It'd be interesting to hear what he has to say on the subject. But he had said, I don't know if I want David Pastrnak to be a captain, only because I want him to just focus on scoring the puck, right? I want him to be David Pastrnak, not have to worry about all the responsibility that comes with being the captain. So it's interesting to get people's perspective on it. But again, we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, and there was so much that we got out of the whole press conference and getting to know Marco, and then obviously that one-on-one. I like that he understood, like I said, the path is something that I brought up, and what stands out to me too, like 14 candidates. That's not a small amount, 4 or 5 maybe is what I was thinking. And I think when we were predicting who might be the next Bruins head coach, that's kind of the list we had. We had like 4 or 5 guys that we were circulating, but 14, and then to end up at the top, like, Don Sweeeny, and maybe that's why it took so long, like really did his due diligence about like what he wants and what direction he wants us to go. And so not that, I needed, or we needed, maybe any more proof. Marco has a young resume, but a strong one at that. I really, really want to highlight Team Germany. I think that did a lot for him. But just to know that out of 14, like what you brought in your interview, and here we go, we have it up on screen. Most recently, head coaching the Ontario Reign AHL LA King affiliate, and then assistant coach behind the LA Kings, which he did talk about how much those two things gave him in terms of a learning curve. And then, of course, developing the German men's national team, which is when he really fell in love with it. But back to that point, out of 14, the things you say, the systems you want to put in place, the way you're going to coach, your coaching style, standing out to Don, I think it just makes me really excited that Don didn't take this lightly, and there were a lot of other good candidates, but Marco stood out.
Yeah, and I think, and again, we'll hear from Don Sweeeny in a second, but before we do, I think one of the interesting things that he did say during his presser is how much he had learned from each of the interview candidates about the team. He said it wasn't easy, right? Because, during that interview process, basically, the coaching candidates are looking at the team and telling them, where they lack,
Yeah.
whether it's the talent or execution or all of the above. And so, he had said it was hard to hear, but it was also a good thing in the sense that, you can use it to sort of improve the roster moving forward. But I had some other questions for Don Sweeeny about Marco Sturm in the interview process, and here's that interview now.
Don, you mentioned a number of qualities that Marco possesses and that the organization values. Is there any quality, or is there a quality or qualities that stands out among the rest?
Well, I think the thing that started to resonate was his passion for coaching. Everybody sees the picture that Marco scores the overtime goal in an outdoor game, and they know he's a passionate player, but his details, the command that he wants to have of his team, game management that people spoke highly about, and he described his ability to adjust But again, it still comes back to his teams play with structure. And he didn't give it up today in terms of what his offensive philosophies are, but we're going to get the puck back. We're going to possess the puck in the offensive zone. We're going to have a neutral zone that's difficult to play. The commitment that he wants of his players, to get on offense is what's going to start to resonate right away. His structure is attention to detail is really good.
You talk about the passion and what you want to see on the ice, but in terms of being a communicator and based on the roster that you have right now and how that could change, why is he the right fit?
Yeah, again, the communication part was paramount for us across the board. So, he's been with star players that we have, and Pasta and Charlie, and he's also been with younger players and seen them have success and allowed them to make some mistakes, as he referenced today, but also grow from them and demand that they need to continue to grow from them and recognize what the responsibilities of every player. I think those are the areas that he does communicate very well on a daily basis. You can tell he wants to go into the locker room. He wants to be part of the entire process of how a team is built and how a team plays.
You had a coaching search a few years back. Is there anything that you learned from that process that helped you this time around?
A different set of circumstances. The previous time we went through a coaching staff, we felt we had a team that was well positioned to take a run, and then we might have a transition and go through some of the things we're going through right now. So we had a little different philosophy this time around and what the criteria were, but it didn't matter. I was still looking for the absolute best coach, the coach that could have a team play with structure. I want to get back to being really hard out every night. I mean, the fan base, the loyal fan base that we have, that's what they expect from our hockey clubs, and a winning environment.
Marco had mentioned the vacant assistant coaching position and what he might look for. Is past head coaching experience important to you based on the fact that this is Marco's first NHL head coaching experience?
Not an absolute criteria, but it has something we've discussed and what could benefit and complement his current staff as it is and himself. He's confident either way. He wants to find the best person that he relates to for the areas that he feels there are gaps in our staff as they're currently comprised, and it would be an added benefit if that were the case at any level. It doesn't have to be the NHL level. As I said in my search, I wasn't just getting a coach that I needed to have NHL head coaching experience. I just wanted the best coach that I felt there was a growth opportunity organizationally, and I think Marco represents that.
Don, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Adam.
So that was one of the interesting things, too, from the press conference, and obviously I asked Don Sweeeny in that interview was, does the vacant assistant head coaching position, is one of the job requirements having NHL head coaching experience, because you have a head coach in Marco Sturm that doesn't have any NHL head coaching experience, and would it be good for him to have that to lean on as part of his coaching staff? And you look around the National Hockey League and you see a number of staffs have assistants with NHL head coaching experience. I mean, look at Mike Sullivan, right, in New York. He just brought on Joe Sacco, David Quinn, a part of that staff as well. Those two guys with NHL head coaching experience. Now, Mike Sullivan, different scenario, right, because he has a ton of NHL head coaching experience. But it'll be interesting to see if the Bruins sort of lean in that direction.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a really good question, because that is one of the remaining question marks when it comes to staff. We know that Jay Leach and Chris Kelly and Bob Essenza, goalie Bob, staying on. So that was something that was answered. And then now there's this one vacant position, which Marco Sturm said he does want him to have special teams and power play experience. So that was like the one requirement. But I think that's going to be, I think often they get overlooked, assistant coaches. But I do think that's going to be a big puzzle piece when we find out who it is. And again, going back to the word intentional, Marco Sturm addressed it a little bit with us as well, and what he's looking for, and what a important piece of the staff, that's going to be, and the communication he wants with them. And Adam, I thought that was a great question. I'm going to answer it in the same way I think Don did, that I don't think it is a requirement, but could it help? And also, side note, that would be such a weird experience, to be the head of a team for a long time, or for whatever, a couple years, and then to go and working under someone. And I know coaches do that, like flip-flopping. Joe Sacco, even Jim Montgomery with Dallas, and then an assistant coach in St. Louis. It would be such an odd experience, but a job in the NHL is a job in the NHL, and maybe some guys preferred or the break, at least from the media. But odd thing. So we'll see who he brings on. Listen, we've got a lot of sound to get to, so we're going to rip through it. Patrice Bergeron, as you mentioned, on set to support Marco Sturm. Marco told us that actually we asked him the top 3 people that he texted or the first 3 people when he found out he had the job, and number 3 is obviously his family up there at first, but number 3 was Patrice Bergeron. They're that close. So let's get Bergie's thoughts on Marco Sturm being the head coach.
Yeah, hopefully it's he can take this team back to the winning habits, and of course the ultimate goal is always to win the cup. But that being said, Marco to me is he's got the perfect making for to being a great coach. He's got the demeanor, he's got the attitude, he's got the positive energy, he's got the aura around him. People want to be associated with him, and I remember him as an amazing teammate. Guys love to be around him. He always brought the smile, always brought the energy, and I love the fact that he's put in the work. He paid his dues to deserve this this job, and he obviously he went in the American League. He went and coached internationally. He was an assistant in NHL as well. So he's bringing a lot of baggage, a lot of experience to this club, and I know he's going to be a great voice to develop the young guys, but also to relate to the older guys and the veterans as well. So, I obviously don't know him as a coach. I know him as a player, and I can only say good things about Marco.
Adam, it's so interesting and encouraging. Everyone knows what the Bergeron-Chara era did for the Boston Bruins. But back to an answer that Marco said in that interview on the desk, he said that Bergeron, and humbly he said this, he said that Bergeron kind of watched him prepare and his routine and how he showed up to the rink. And I love hearing that, these 2 guys that I mentioned, Bergie and Chara, just get all the accolades and deservingly so. But it was guys that came before them with like little pieces as well that started to set that up and build that culture. So super encouraging that someone that Bergeron learned from is now the head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was just thinking about another teammate of Marco Sturm and Zdeno Chara, and we were just talking about the assistant head coaching job. Zdeno Chara was brought on as a special consultant, right, last year?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm just throwing it out there. It's fun to talk about. I'm not sure if that's even something that would interest Chara or the Bruins for that matter, but not a bad guy to have on the bench. It'd certainly be noticeable, wouldn't he?
Adam, you're going to kill me. I totally missed the punchline because our producer was talking to us, so it muted your mic. Tell me what you said again, because I think I'm just reacting weirdly to that, being like, yeah, sure. Didn't hear what you actually said. Did you say Chara as an assistant?
Yeah, I did. I said Chara as an assistant. Again, I'm not sure if that would interest him or the Bruins. He was brought on as a special consultant last year, obviously a former teammate of Sturm. Again, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. It'd certainly be noticeable on the bench. That was my haha moment.
No, because he's so tall. Gotcha. Right. I love the idea, and I think even Marco said that he originally took a break from hockey because he wanted to spend more time with the family, and then Team Germany called, and that didn't last long. We know that Bergeron and Chara both have kind of been like, we want to take a break, focus on being fathers, but they're around more and more, and I know that it's just going to start coming back. So maybe not this year, but I definitely wouldn't rule that out as a possibility as they're, spending more time with the franchise. Okay, we got one more segment to get to, Judd. But hey, Jack, what's up? Shout out to Jack. Judd and Brick gave their thoughts on the 30th coach hiring.
Thanks, Brick. One of the things that I think that was clear throughout the media conference and throughout our conversation with Marco Sturm, the 30th head coach of the Boston Bruins, was the word culture. And it seems like his path, his time as a National Hockey League player, his time here in Boston makes him uniquely prepared.
Yeah, that was definitely the main topic of the press conference, was the reestablishing of that culture, which was the envy of the league for the last 20 years. And even though they've moved on from Chara, from Bergeron, even from Marchand, they need to reestablish it because it took a hit last year. And that's what losing does. It makes you have to really reevaluate what's going on in the room and how are we playing, and are we playing for one another. And I think that's been probably job number one as the head coach now solidified for Marco Sturm.
And the other thing that he talked about, Brick, he talked about it with us, was his role as a communicator with a lot of the veteran players and some of the young players that he's going to have on his roster. He talked about being direct and honest, and how he connects will be really important.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it's one of his strengths and what he got in his playing career from other coaches, that directness, that honesty, no head games, and he thinks that gets the most out of the players in your room so you can have the best team possible. But you also have to have confidence in yourself, and I think he exudes that confidence. He has that believability that he's the man for the job. This is the right job for him. He understands the challenges that are in front of him, but he's going to meet those challenges because he has so much belief in what he does.
And he was one of the things that he talked about was living in the moment and not looking too far ahead. But that said, remember, he's not going to play his first official National Hockey League game as the head coach of the Bruins until October. But these next 3 months before the Bruins step onto the ice for training camp at Warrior Ice Arena, those are going to be crucial.
They are, and roster construct and how you're going to do it. Are you in the trade market? Are you in the free agent market? What are you going to do with all the draft capital? You know, as a head coach, you're looking to win games now, not 3 years from now, but he understands the value of having as many picks as the Bruins have moving forward. But I think he knows the issues that surrounded this team from a year ago, and it's a lengthy one. It's a lengthy one that has to be addressed, and it's going to have to start in training camp. So, yeah, lots of work to be done right now in terms of getting your team prepared, because I don't think we know for sure what this roster is going to look like come opening night.
And one of the things that he talked about, the other word that came up was evolving, and evolving offensively. I think that that's really something that we're all going to look forward to once training camp starts and once the regular season begins.
Yeah, and that's about playing with pace. And if you're going to play with pace, you want to play fast, you got to think fast. And then you have to teach fast. Teaching offense is very difficult. You're going to need better play down the middle. He understands that your offense really begins in your own defensive zone. And if they can get better in that area, your offense will be better. Your power play will be better. And those are the things that he's going to be faced with, challenging. And I think the other thing that he also touched on, and he's coming from a player development side, and the importance that whatever young players the Bruins have in training camp that have an opportunity to make this Bruins team, you got to develop those guys, and they have to be impactful guys to help you win hockey games.
And the other thing that he understands, Brick, is that his roster today is going to look a lot different here in the next few weeks as the Bruins embark on the draft and on the NHL trade deadline, and how that roster is going to change. A lot of the heavy lifting will be done by the general manager and the player operations staff.
Yeah, and that being said, though, Judd, the feeling I think that we got from the press conference today and listening to Marco and Donnie speak was a real sense of accomplishment. You know, this was a long, drawn-out process, but they felt that they did it the right way and they got the best person for the job, and I think that came across.
It sure did. Adam, we've been chatting too much, so we got to send it to break to pay some bills, and guys, we'll be right back after this.
I said it was very weird to see him, you know, wearing the Florida Panthers jersey, and it still is. But to be honest with you now, like, I'm really cheering for Brad, because people are saying, "Are you cheering for Florida or Edmonton?" I'm like, I'm cheering for Brad. Like, I just want him to get it. He deserves it. I've been impressed with the way he's been playing throughout these playoffs. He's been an amazing addition. Obviously, he's one of the reasons why they're in the final.
Amen to that. I mean, I wouldn't change a word that Bergeron said. A lot of people, and I think you're one of them, that it's weird and you're not kind of over the rivalry. At this point, I'm just blinders on and I'm cheering for Brad, and I can hate Florida afterwards.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, you know, who were around back then would have said the same thing about Ray Bourque in Colorado, right? They're cheering for Ray Bourque because of what he meant to the Bruins, and obviously what Brad Marchand means, still means to the Bruins, and now means to the Florida Panthers, scoring the opening goal in Game 3, 4 goals in the Stanley Cup Final already, 8 goals in the playoffs, 64 postseason goals in his career. So he has been a playoff performer throughout his career, and that has continued in a different area code.
I'm going to assume the answer is no, but did you see that lopsided win coming? Because I did not.
No, I didn't, especially with how the first 2 games played out, how it was so tightly contested back and forth. But, yeah, I mean, Florida just dominating, setting the tone. The penalties in the first period in these last two games especially have just been unbelievable. I think we had 11 penalties in the first period of game 2 and then 8 penalties between the two teams in the first period of game 3. And so obviously the Panthers were able to capitalize on those Edmonton mistakes, but a lot of just self-inflicted wounds for the Oilers, offensive zone penalties, too many men on the ice. You can't make those kind of mistakes against a Florida Panthers team that's going to make you pay, and that's exactly what you did and what they did. And then you had all the shenanigans at the end of the game too. But the big storyline, I think, Sophia, is the goaltending. Who's it going to be for Edmonton? Is Stuart Skinner or Calvin Pickard?
Yeah, that is the big story, and I don't know, dude. When it was between like Lena Salmark and Jeremy Swayman, I was biting my nails. Like I can't make those kind of decisions, and I couldn't imagine the pressure of making that decision. But also, if you're either goalie, all the chatter around it. So it's like, okay, well, I got the pick, so I better not screw this up. It's there's so much that goes into that, and I think that's going to be a big one. I don't know. Who would you pick? Would you put in Stewart again?
I'm sticking with Skinner. One more game, just because I don't think that was, what happened in game 3 was not on him. And I think that you got to give him another shot, especially with the way he had played, after taking over for Pickard again.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll see what the decision is, and we'll see if the Edmonton Oilers can bounce back. We've got one more break, and then we'll come back to wrap up the show. And we're back, and we're also gone because it's time to wrap up. Time to wrap up the show, guys. Remember, Hockey Hub every Monday and Wednesday live at 10 a.m. on all the NESN Nation, the socials, and of course on your TV screens. We'll be back next Monday. Everyone have a good weekend. Adam, have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you then. Bye, everyone.